Okay, everyone, this is the recording for today's Mishnayot for Sunday. Today is 5/10/2026, and we're learning Keilim, Parak 3, 7 and 8, and Parak 4, 1 and 2. So, just a background, obviously Keilim is talking about vessels that were used. So it could be talking about earthenware vessels and the laws of like how they become tameh or pure, which is impure, or tahora, which is pure, and how they, and like what their status is in different situations. So in this Mishnah, it talks about how they're utensils that were made to be used with a coating. But whether their coating becomes tameh depends on the type of coating used. The Mishnah gives an example. So we're talking about a coating. In the past Mishnayot, it was talking about how, let's say, a vessel is cracked and it needs, let's say, a coating over it, like tar, pitch, whatever, to kind of keep it intact. So, tameh, like the laws of impurity, if the outside is touched, does the inside need to be, if the inside becomes tameh, does the outside become tameh? Or if the outside becomes tameh, does the inside become tameh? So, now it's talking about utensils that, like, have a coating. So, mecham shet palo bechomer ubecharasid. If a kettle was coated with thick clay, which sticks well to the kettle, or with earthenware powder. Now, Rav's second explanation, this was made from broken pieces of earthenware that were ground up. So the powder is just ground up, I think, clay, essentially, which does not stick as well, and the kettle becomes tameh. Hanogea bechomer tameh. Whether foods or liquids touch the coating of thick clay, becomes tameh, because this coating is considered part of the kettle since it does not fall off. Uvecharsit tahor, but whatever touches the coating made of powdered earthenware remains tahor, because it is not considered part of the kettle since it eventually crumbles and falls off. So, if you have a different coating that stays on and something becomes tameh in that pot, the whole thing becomes tameh. But if you have like a powdered layer, since it eventually falls off, crumbles, it says, but whatever touches the coating, it doesn't become tameh because it eventually breaks off. Now, the Mishnah discusses the laws for utensils that were either fixed with an unsuitable material or which were made entirely out of a material that is not really suitable for their purpose. Kumkum shinikav, if a hot water urn developed a hole that was big enough to make it tahor, which past Mishnah would argue whether it's the size of an olive, if it can fall through, or a walnut, etc. You can search it up if you want to. V'yasa'u bezefes, and he repaired it by filling the hole with pitch. Rabbi Yossi mitaher she'enu yachol lekabel et hachamin kitzonan. Rabbi Yossi rules that it is tahor because it cannot hold hot liquids as it does cold liquids. Pitch begins to melt when it is exposed to heat and is therefore not an effective plug for the hole in a hot water urn. The urn therefore continues to be considered a broken utensil and cannot become tameh, meaning that a broken utensil cannot become impure, especially a vessel that holds water. Other vessels it talks about. V'chein haya omer beklei zefes, and that is how Rabbi Yossi would rule concerning utensils made entirely from pitch. Since these cannot be used for holding hot things, they are not considered Keilim, though they were made to use for holding cold things. The Mishnah discusses the status of meta utensils that were coated with pitch. Klei nechoshet shezafatan. If copper utensils were lined with pitch to preserve them, and they become tameh taharun, foods and liquids that touch the pitch are tahor, since copper utensils are meant to be used over fire, and pitch melts when exposed to the heat, so clearly the pitch is not considered part of the utensil and does not become tameh with it. Im layayin tameyin. However, if these metal utensils were designed to hold wine and they were coated with pitch, the pitch is considered part of the utensil, since this lining was needed to protect the taste of the wine from being ruined by the metallic taste of copper. The lining is considered part of the utensil and becomes tameh along with it. We learned in the previous Mishnah that if an earthenware utensil with a hole in it is repaired with a plug made of pitch, and the utensils the kind used only for cold foods and liquids, the utensils can become tameh. An earthenware barrel is used only for cold foods and liquids, and a plug made of pitch is therefore effective in restoring its status as a complete utensil. The Mishnah discusses the status of the plug itself in regard to transmitting tuma. So if a barrel, which is something that normally holds cold liquids, not hot ones, clearly if you use pitch for that, it's considered a complete vessel now. But a vessel like a hot water, and if you use pitch, it's not a complete vessel, because if you use hot water, it breaks. Chaves shinikva. If an earthenware barrel developed a hole large enough to make it tar, as I said before, is discussed, V'yasab ezefes yater mitzarka, and he repaired it with more pitch than was necessary, and the barrel becomes tameh. Hanogea bitzarka. Tame. Whether foods or liquids touch the part of the pitch that is necessary to plug the hole, become tame, because that part is considered part of the barrel and is tame. Yater mitzarka tahor, but whatever touches the part of the plug that is more than necessary is tahor, because that part of the plug is not considered part of the barrel. So let's say there's like a piece of pitch and a lot of it is sticking out. So I guess that part is not considered part of the barrel, the vessel. So therefore, when it is touched by something that is tame, it does not transmit tama and it does not become tame. Similarly, zefes shinatva al hachavis hanogea ba tahor. If some pitch dripped onto an earthenware barrel and stuck to it, and the barrel became tame, whatever foods or liquids touch it are tahor. Since the barrel does not need the pitch in any way, it is not considered part of the barrel and is not tame. The Mishnah discusses a wooden or earthenware funnel in which the hole at the bottom was plugged with pitch, making it fit to be used as a container. Now it continues. Mashpech al eitz v'shel cheres shavkako bezefes. A wooden or earthenware funnel whose bottom hole was plugged with pitch. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah mitame. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah rules that it is fit to become tame because the pitch seals the hole effectively and changes the funnel into a container. Rabbi Akiva mitame b'shel eitz umitaher b'shel cheres. And Rabbi Akiva rules that the wooden funnel is fit to become tame once it has been plugged, but the earthenware tunnel is tahor. It does not become tame. Rabbi Akiva is one of the opinion that pitch is not a good seal for an earthenware funnel. Therefore, an earthenware funnel plugged with pitch is not considered a container. But he considers pitch a proper seal for a wooden funnel. Therefore, a wooden funnel plugged with pitch is considered a container and therefore can become tame. Rabbi Yosei mitar b'shnehem. Rabbi Yosei holds that both of them are tahor. He does not consider a pitch a good plug for either kind of funnel. Now, those are the first two Mishnayos. Now we're starting chapter 4. Now we learned in Mishnah 2:2 that Parak 2:2, that a piece that breaks off from an earthenware utensil can still become tame if it can hold a certain amount of liquid, which is argued whether it's revius, more, less, and you can look back if you want to, while standing on its own without being supported by something else. The Mishnah discusses what is considered being able to stand on its own. A broken piece of earthenware that cannot stand on its own and hold that liquid because of its handle, which causes it to tip over. Or because it had a sharp point sticking out from its bottom as a result of the break, and the sharp point causes it to tip over. Tahor. It is considered tahor since it cannot stand on its own, and therefore it can't necessarily hold the required amount of liquid. Therefore, it's not considered a vessel, and therefore it cannot become tameh. Nitla ha'ozen nishbar ha'chidud. If the handle was then removed or the sharp point broke off, tahor, the broken piece remains tahor, even though it can now hold the required amount of liquid. Once a broken earthenware piece loses its ability to become tameh, it can never become tameh again. Meaning that if something breaks and that piece cannot hold itself up, but it's still usable, it can't become tameh. Rabbi, I believe, it's not necessarily a situation that brings up, but yeah, essentially once a kli becomes actually broken, it can't become tameh again. Rabbi Yehuda metame, and Rabbi Yehuda considers it tameh since it is now capable of holding the required amount of liquid. But Rabbi Yehuda doesn't agree with this, meaning that if you basically fix it back together or you take off the sharp point or something that stops it from falling down, he considers it tameh since it's capable of holding the liquid. The previous case of the Mishnah was about a utensil that broke along its side, but its bottom remained intact. The Mishnah has because of the opposite case where the bottom broke but the sides remained intact. Chavis shinif chasa vehi mekablet al dafnuteya. A barrel whose bottom broke, but it can still hold liquids on its walls if the barrel is laid on its side. O shinech lika kamon shtei arevus. Or the barrel was split down the middle from top to bottom so that it became like two oval bowls that can each hold liquid when not laid on their sides. Rabbi Yehuda metahir. Rabbi Yehuda rules that the remaining pieces are tahor because they cannot hold liquid in their original position. But the sages rule that they are tameh because even complete barrels are occasionally laid on their sides, so that this position can also be considered the original position. Now, this is the last Mishnah. The previous Mishnah discusses the tumah status of a barrel that broke apart. This Mishnah discusses the tumah status of a barrel that is cracked but is not yet broken apart. This was brought up in earlier Mishnahs of different vessels. The Mishnah defines the point at which even a cracked barrel is considered broken. Chavis shinit ra'a'a. If an earthenware barrel developed cracks and became weak, ve'eno yechola lehitaltel bechatzi kav gru, and it cannot be carried with half a kav of dried figs in it without falling apart. It doesn't tell you what a kav is. Well, it's just a form of measurement, I guess. In it without falling apart, tahora. It is tahor. Half a kav of figs is considered enough food for a meal. A barrel that cannot carry this amount of food without breaking is not considered a functional barrel. Therefore, it cannot become tameh. So a barrel that is cracked, like it can almost break, and you put in basically a meal's worth of figs, and if it can't hold those figs, then clearly it's a broken vessel. Or if it tries to hold those figs, it'll break. Clearly, it is a broken vessel and cannot become tameh. The Mishnah defines the point at which a gesteira, a broken but still usable piece of earthenware, is no longer considered functional as a result of being cracked. So let's say a barrel breaks or a vessel breaks, and there's this piece, kind of like bowl shape, let's say, that can still be used. Now it's a question of whether that becomes tameh or tahor, if it's still usable or not usable, if it's still broken or not broken. Well, technically it is a broken piece, but it could be used for something else. Afal pishi mikabelet achlen, and even though the gesteira can still hold solid foods, tahora, it is tahora, is tahor, is pure. She'en sheyirin l'shiyarin. This is because a remnant is not used for a remnant. That is, people do not use one broken piece to catch the leaking liquid from another broken piece. Rather, they throw away a broken piece that leaks. Since a gesteira is generally used for liquids and not solids, and people do not keep a broken piece that leaks, a gesteira cannot hold liquid, is not considered kli, even though it can hold solid food. So if you have like a bowl that has like a couple holes on the bottom, and it's like a broken piece, and just because it can hold solid food, does not mean that it's a complete vessel. It's a remnant, and since it can hold liquid, which I'm not sure if that was because that was its original purpose, or that's even if it was meant to hold food. If it can't hold liquid, it's not considered like a vessel or piece, because no one would really want to use that. Now we are done with our 4 Mishnayot. Thank you for listening.